All right, and we're recording here with Chris Housenick, Life Unraveled. This is going to be our 4th episode. Special guest here. So, how you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there.
Excellent. Still getting over the holiday flu epidemic that we had around here.
I was on the bronchitis train on the side of that, and yeah, most of the way there.
Yeah, man, I'm still feeling it in my chest too. I've never had the flu as an adult, but it was super rough. Yeah. As I relayed to you a couple of times already, man. I was out for like at least 6 days.
Yeah, I mean the only good side was that it was between Christmas and New Year's, where I didn't have to get anybody anywhere on a schedule.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of a bummer time to get sick because I missed like our awards and everything, but it was kind of like, I mean, I had minimal classes that I had to teach that I missed. Like I haven't started adjuncting yet, but I start tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was working yesterday and all weekend on lecture notes and stuff.
The Mrs. Housenick will make sure to stop in and make fun of you and Tundra from the back of the room at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I was having to lean over and because they didn't give me my Blackboard login, so you should have, like Booty and I were in here. We went and saw Todd Snyder in concert the other night at George's. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of Todd Snyder?
I don't think so.
So he plays, we're going to do a whole music unravel on him. I'd never really heard, I mean, I knew who he was, but I'd never really listened to his music. And he's kind of like a folk storyteller. We're going to do one, I think, we were going to try and do one yesterday while it was still super fresh, but neither one of us could make it work. So we're going to do one Friday over Todd Snyder Unraveled. So I'm looking forward to it because he played an incredible show. It's actually... they had all these tables up front, and then it was like a packed house outside of that. George's is not a huge venue, but it's like they bring in like big time bands like Humphreys McGee, and we saw Jimmy Herring from Widespread Panic there. But Todd Snyder is in a band with Widespread Panic's Dave Schools,
okay,
and Dwayne Trucks, Derek Trucks' brother, the drummer for Panic. So I really enjoyed watching him play, but he's in this band called Hardworking Americans. So, yeah, it was cool. I played harmonica a lot, too. It was kind of like a Neil Young. It was just him, acoustic guitar, harmonica. It was really a really good show, but we were right up front. Like, literally, there were like 2 rows of tables, maybe like 6 tables across, and we were right up front. And he just came in. I forget how many songs he played, close to 20, and just...
Nice.
I was blown away.
Yeah.
It was way, way more than I expected. So
it's fun when you see bands like that where they strip it down and it's just them. I still remember I've never actually seen the Dave Matthews Band, the whole thing, but I saw it was called Dave Matthews and Friends.
Oh yeah, I remember when he did that.
Yeah, it was Dave Matthews. You were probably 13.
I was. That's like I've been charting Dave Matthews since I was in junior high. John Emmerling from the gym?
Oh, yeah.
So he's going to come on the podcast. For 2 cool things about John Emmerling is that he's seen Dave Matthews Band 35 times in concert. He saw Widespread Panic in concert back in some bar in like Oklahoma or Texas for $7. Now, I mean, literally... Panic almost only plays 2 or 3 day events. Like Colby, my buddy's going to see him at Mexico again, and that's a 4-night thing. They played in Vegas around August, I believe it was, 3-night show at the Joint in the Hard Rock. So everything that Red Rock's 3-4 night shows, and that is several $100s to go.
Part of it is that a lot of rock stars are aging. And that the time on the road is what kills them. But if you park them in a location for a week, you get in on Monday, you rehearse Tuesday, Wednesday, you play Thursday through Saturday or whatever. That's why you're seeing a lot more of I'm a child of the 80s arena.
Yeah.
So you're seeing more and more of those bands do the Hollywood residencies. Def Leppard's going to play a month in Vegas.
I think I saw where Lady Gaga took up residency in Vegas.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses did it for a while too.
Interesting.
But it's
Did you go to the Guns N' Roses show when they played?
No.
Did you think about it?
Oh, I definitely thought about it, but it was oxygen level seats. I think at War Memorial were like $80 or $90.
Yeah. That's I don't think I've ever seen a show at War Memorial Stadium. That's outside, correct?
Yes.
I've seen a football game there, but I've never seen, because there's another stadium besides Verizon and War Memorial that I've seen some concerts at in Little Rock, but I don't remember what the name of it is. It's not the Village. I've seen some bands at Vino's. It's a little pizza joint, but they have like this back room that's just
Most of mine that I saw were in the Northeast still. Because they always came through. Like Philadelphia was great for that. Every band would always hit Philadelphia on its way through. Pittsburgh, State College itself had an arena. Like I saw.
Yeah, I bet they had some good shows come through. Would you see any good shows while you were in undergrad or grad school?
Grad school, my wife and I joked about it. Aerosmith, they were like just road dogs. Now this is 15 years ago. But we saw them because the great thing is it's like everything's close in town. It's only like a 15-minute drive.
Yeah.
And parking's actually free at that concert, which is rare. But Eric Clapton when I was in grad school.
Oh, nice. You know, I heard that his health is really deteriorating. I shared something on Facebook the other day that he's on like with what's AC/DC's former lead singer before he was replaced by Axl Rose's name?
Oh,
is it Bon Scott or was that the guy that passed away?
That's the guy that passed away. I know you're talking about the tinnitus or whatever.
Brian
Johnson.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he pretty much went deaf, if I'm not mistaken, from what I hear, and I think.
Well, he was going. I think the doctors told him you can't perform anymore. You're done.
That is what this article I was reading about Eric Clapton said. Same thing. So major bummer. I was talking with Colby again the other day. We were talking about guitar players because we've seen Panic several times together, and he's seen them more times than I have. But Jimmy Herring, in terms of people, because he's on another thing that he's a part of this guy's album for, is on tour for that. Just went on tour with the Invisible Whip, which we went and saw at George's, and and then all his work with Panic, and then he was with the Dead before that.
Oh, there's
Colonel Bruce Hampton before that. So it's like in terms of people that are doing things and have been doing things in the living guitarist world, Jimmy Herring is top 5 living in my opinion.
Yeah.
And why that is because Eric Clapton's, I think, 72, deteriorating health, and hasn't really done much in my lifetime. He has, but I mean, not when I was old enough to really appreciate it. Like it's the stuff I look back at and I'm like, oh, I miss that. But it's like I was, preteen or early teenage.
I think if I remember right, when he came through, he was about when Danielle and I got married, give or take a couple of weeks either direction.
Nice. That would have been amazing to see.
Oh, it was.
Jealous.
You talk about the stripped down. I think they played for about 40, 45 minutes with the full sort of band behind him. Then he sort of pulled out the stool and the acoustic and did about 2 or 3 numbers like that. Then they brought the whole band.
What did he do acoustic? Do you remember any of the songs?
Tears in Heaven, I think. Layla, the classics.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah. No, I prefer the electric Layla version, but they're just the original there's more like angst to it. It loses a little something to me. I mean, it's still a great song, but it's a very different kind of song, slowed down.
Man, and it's the same to be said for like just live performances.
Oh yeah,
that's like Panic, and a lot of bands have over the years have moved to this model and done this. They bought out all their archives from the record companies. Panic did that. So now Panic records every song at every show and puts out videos, and they really are hitting the media more than maybe any other band I really know of in terms of how they're set up right now. But a lot of bands are moving to that. But and just like diversification, they're on Spotify too. I mean, they're all over the place. But it's interesting that most bands don't have the ability to do something like Panic's doing with that, buy out the record contract. So that now their studio stuff sounds a lot closer to their live stuff, whereas like 10 years ago, it's not even a comparison. And like seeing most bands live, they have kind of like a different live act than they do a studio. And that's so evident for like Panic's older stuff. But they've always really recorded a lot. I mean, you can see so many videos on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I know I've been to a couple shows. My wife's huge into Fish. And they were one of the first that I remember having. They would record shows and you could download it. Because the first Fish show I was at was one of the biggest sellers for a bunch of years. because they played lots of more rarities. Like they have this one arrangement called Harpua. It's like there's multiple, basically they all start changing positions. Like Fishman comes out from behind the drums and sings, plays. He's got an Electrolux vacuum cleaner. But you could download individual shows because it was great because you could, hey, I was at this show, and you could record.
Yeah. I want to.
Jam bands in general did that. They figured out that every show was different. Give everybody every show.
You mentioned jam bands. So I was like, the Todd Snyder show the other night. He's like, I'm in a jam band called Hardworking Americans. I mean, he's just playing and singing, and he's like, and the fact that I'm in a jam band is proof that people still like to do drugs or something like that. I mean, it was just this funny, but it was a part of his song, and he was like, just how he it's almost like conversation. He actually has a book that came out too, but he had this funny bit in one of his songs about being in a jam band and.
Yeah.
Funny. Well, anyway, but so have you got to see Fish or Trey Anastasio since you moved to Arkansas?
No, Arkansas concerts have been hard. I remember about 5 years ago, I drugged two guys to Tulsa when Van Halen came through.
Yeah, I remember that. What was it? Pearson and
Derek.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're going.
Have you talked to Derek recently?
I troll him on Facebook a little bit. He's gone up to Pittsburgh.
He's famous now. We're talking about him on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. But I troll him because it's like, he's used to Arkansas winter.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it's like, I think the high yesterday was like 9 degrees.
Did you see his status he made about his dog? He's like, the dog, he opened the door to let him out. And the dog was like, no, I'm just going to go in the house today.
Yeah. It's like, welcome to Pittsburgh. I mean, he's fitting right in. I know we're going to look him up when we go up in the summertime.
Is he adjuncting up there?
I'm not really sure what his status was. I know he was going to University of Pittsburgh to work on his
PhD.
Yeah,
good for him, man.
So that was part of the plan. I don't know if that began in January or if that's going to start in summer.
That's something I've strongly considered doing because now. Has Danielle looked at that at all? Because, as an employee of UACCM, I don't know how it is for part-time, but I'm trying to teach more and more classes there as I can, especially they actually just offered the first online class for the history department last semester ever.
Oh, yeah.
So, this setup right here is great for recording lectures, for anything I want to do if I want to do an online class. Now they are is tech like this, they're very uniform with how they upload their stuff. I don't know how it is for online courses, but anything that goes on Blackboard is super it has to be captioned this way, tagged this way. It's almost like citing it. So it goes in the database correctly, I guess.
They're working that way. I don't really know as much behind the scenes.
I am super list oriented like that, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's until I figure out how to really use the software, it's kind of this semester probably all I'm going to do is
we've had debates about that because I've been teaching online now between my last job almost 10 years, using Blackboard even just to post stuff up or full online classes now. I just finished up a 3-week American government version. Yeah. And there's debates and discussions, both administrators and teachers, about how and what all this should be done behind the scenes. I know there were times, when I first got to tech in 2009, they were kind of do whatever you want. About 5 years ago, they tried to standardize really heavily. Don't modify the look, don't modify the butt, like idiotic little things. You must leave the words, no buttons. And kind of OCD, anal retentive. Now they've kind of loosened that up a bit. You're going to have, but there's not sort of a consensus. A lot of that is disability oriented. Being able for somebody who's...
Yeah, I did hear that. And it makes total sense.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking with Booty, who's going to do the Todd Snyder podcast with me. And he was pretty much saying the same thing. It's it's for good reason, whether, you agree with it or understand it. things can be more inclusive. For everyone.
Now I think you have the advantage being a department of one or a specialty of one. You don't have to coordinate with anybody.
Yeah,
it's basically at most universities, when you have similar versions of the same class, they have to be you have to standardize more.
Yeah.
Like, I would not want to be Dr. Brucker in our English department where you're offering like 75 sections of English composition, and they all have to look pretty.
We talked about that, and that's just for standards. I mean, I have and I think they probably did the same thing with Danielle, but they just gave me my syllabus and were like, "This is what you're going to do." And I was, and there's wiggle room within that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like all the major themes, all the topics, here's what we want them to understand, it's all in there for me. They're like, as a matter of fact, just put your name on it and then print it and hand it out to the students.
It's pretty close because I know in Arkansas and in most states, they've standardized. The idea is if you take, English comp at UACCM and then you transfer to tech, that class is going to have to transfer. There's a whole ACTS system in place. That's the idea is to save people money. If you want to watch people lose their mind, say, hey, you spent a couple $100 on classes at UACCM that don't count anymore.
Yeah.
So you have that idea. It's like, okay, what do you get at a Comp 1, Comp 2, World History 1 or 2? They're going to have to be the same across the state. Like I think it was, God, I'm getting old, 6 or 7 years ago where we had that discussion, for American government. Now, there's not nearly as much disagreement, I'm not going to teach somebody American government and never mention a president. It doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah.
So,
what's like as a political scientist like, man?
It's good. I mean, it's been a strange year and a half.
That's true. I would totally agree with that assessment of the situation.
Yeah. Honestly, on a day-to-day basis, it isn't that bad. Because really, whatever happens, in the White House, whatever happens with a former White House advisor, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't fit into my class, what we're doing. If we're talking about something like federalism, and we've got our discussions of I'm trying to remember. Can we say the word? The debate over what foreign countries? Why don't we get immigrants from Norway? Can we swear on this? Yeah. Wolf Blitzer does. We're recording this. Right after the shithole controversy.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah, I know, right? Well, and I will say this: the main reason I want, and I was intentionally going to bring this up, is just while you're on, is because I know you can provide some commentary. But that's the coolest thing that I've enjoyed about the podcast is just commenting on current events that are relevant to my interest or my guest interest or a combination of both. Like, you can provide commentary and really, in a huge sense of the word, educate me and or the audience both. Whereas I'm not going to really offer my commentary on such issues. But that's, like where I get a lot of my commentary is by listening to podcasts. One of the very first things I'm going to refer my students to is we're starting off with the Mongols. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever listened to Wrath of the Khans, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
No.
It is so good, dude. And I'm going to tell them that. And I might even allow, they've all got to do a paper. I have 32 students, and I might allow them to do that to be a topic. Mm-hmm. I'm going to generate a whole bunch of topics and just let them pick. Mm-hmm. So.
No, I think that's important. Whatever media or whatever gets people interested is, you run with it. In political science, we've talked about that, the sort of the Daily Show and Jon Stewart effect. Back when he was doing the Daily Show, there was times where, especially younger people, that was their form of news.
Yeah.
I mean, and you still see this, I'm a big John Oliver fan.
I haven't gotten into John Oliver very much. I could watch him. Maybe I should.
He puts on YouTube. he puts a lot of his sort of main topics. His show's broken really into two pieces. The first, say, 10 minutes is the rehash of the week, because he only does one Sunday nights. So the first 10 minutes of the rehash of the week, whatever, like 2 or 3 of the biggest stories are, and then he has sort of a the second part is a main like think piece, like this is our big argument. Like he was talking about how, you know, one of his first episodes was how big tobacco corporations were exploiting small countries. They had the money, the resources to be able to, you know, push environmental regulations, stop anti-smoking campaigns, things of that nature.
That's an interesting topic.
Yeah, so he goes into those sorts of things. He's done a lot of criminal justice reform, bail systems, and things like that.
You ever follow Vice very much?
A little bit. I know I get it. I cut the cord and I get I get HBO. I get the HBO app. I've seen it and checked it out a little bit.
You know, I actually watch way more of their stuff on YouTube. Mm-hmm. They have I could be wrong here, but I feel like they have hundreds of playlists on YouTube, to where like they'll have like a playlist called Fringes that has a lot of cool documentaries in it, and then some of those same documentaries might be in another playlist. Mm-hmm. Like that's Jesse Weiss and I, when he came on for the first podcast, we were like, hey, we're going to talk about this and that, but we ended up just talking about Star Wars for 2 hours. So I'm going to end up dropping that into the after the show playlist, because it's just a Last Jedi review, you know, and he's going to come on again and talk about national parks, and we're probably going to do a totally separate episode on the Buffalo River. Mm-hmm. He's actually making a documentary on the buffalo, so all on his phone.
People do that. One of my funny things, it's called Pittsburgh Dad. It's these 2 comedy guys. They're out of Pittsburgh. It's about a weekly little show. It's about 3 or 4 minutes, but they shoot it all on iPhones.
Interesting.
And it's kind of a caricature of Pittsburghers. You know, basically, you know, the Steelers are gods, the strange accent. A lot of the funny ones for him is of that series is when they review movies. Like they take him to movies that your dad should not go to. Oh man, take him to Twilight. There's 50 Shades of Grey.
Too funny.
Magic Mike, you know, and all of a sudden, like your dad is trying to review this, and he gets all, stammered and crazy and stuff like that. But it's the same idea. It's like 4 minutes. But
yeah, man, I love. I guess what you would call that, like sketch comedy, or I don't know what the technical term is for it, but when they get like kids to do stuff with their parents or their grandparents.
Oh yeah,
I've seen some funny videos on that, man, for sure. So, did you have you checked out the David Letterman? He's got a show on Netflix, and I watched it yesterday. I had Barack Obama was his first guest.
I caught that much, but I wasn't sure what anymore with which streaming service is he on?
Yeah, yeah. It was good though. But here's the thing that kind of turned my eye on that is I watched it. It was good, and then I was like, okay, I want to see the next episode, because it's showing like George Clooney's going to be on there, mm-hmm. and all these other guests, and there's only one episode available, which means
they're doing the rollout.
Netflix is taking away our ability to be able to show hole it and binge watch things, man, and I do not like that. HBO's already doing that to me.
We were used to it. My wife and I, Hulu does that for some shows too.
Yeah, definitely. Hulu.
We watched The Handmaid's Tale.
I don't think I've seen that yet.
Great show, dark, but they intentionally they put out like 3 episodes, mm-hmm. and then once a week put out an episode, because we just saw the commercial. It's coming back in April, and we were like, okay, yeah, April, and then we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna get like maybe an episode or 2, and you're gonna have to watch it like a real television show.
Man, yeah,
I know. Oh, 21st century problems.
I want to watch it all, and it's not like I'm not gonna watch it all again before the next season comes out.
Oh no,
I might even watch it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, we're chugging through Stranger Things right now.
I saw you post about that. Have you seen? I know I keep talking about this, but have you seen Dark yet?
Dark? No.
Cora and I are We're going to do a review on it. It's probably only be like a 30-minute podcast, but it is so good, dude. I mean, it is like a teenage/adult version of Stranger Things. Like, think Stranger Things multi-generational with time travel.
Let that sink in.
Oh, yeah.
The one I keep pushing you on, Orphan Black.
I keep hearing a lot about that. I gotta make a note of that.
It's really good. It's trippy. The acting is incredible with it.
Was that the episode that Dylan Sparks' character was in?
Yes,
he was funny.
Season 4.
It looks just like him, man.
Yes.
It's scary.
Oh yeah, but no, Orphan Black is really good, and there's no way really around it. Like, spoiler, the key of Orphan Black is it's about cloning, human cloning.
Interesting.
And one of the funny things is, there's only one actress who plays the clones. So she winds up playing different versions.
So like the Boba Fett of Orphan Black. Because remember in Attack of the Clones, they make all the clones off of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
All the stormtroopers.
Yep, there's one. But imagine them all having different personalities, different approaches, and you wind up with one actress playing all versions of herself.
Yeah. It's interesting how that is not the case in the new Star Wars trilogy. So like Finn, yeah. He is not a Boba Fett stormtrooper, and I don't think any of them are.
No, I'm the Star Wars nerd reading the books, and
old canon or new canon?
New canon.
Yeah, see, I'm wanting to get into the new canon too, but I'm also wanting to read the old canon Luke and Leia follow-up story following Return of the Jedi.
Those are great if you can find them in like used bookstores everywhere.
Yeah,
but because I think the books are interesting because they expand some of the ideas, they explain what the hell is going on, behind the scenes. Like I've got trying to think what I've read. Aftermath is one. Basically, it's right after. It's basically a lot of it's Empire driven. Mm-hmm. Aftermath. There's a 3-book series which.
A lot of trilogies in the old canon stuff.
It's the breakup of the Empire. You've just lost the Battle of Endor. What happens to the Empire? And they explain some people surrender, some people fight. A lot of the books in that trilogy, basically, they go off into like wild space. They go in the fringes of the galaxy and regroup and hide for like years. And that's
the Outer Rim.
Yes.
So what's your... We're getting close to like where I feel like it's almost time for the next election. Like here in the next. I mean, when do you think that's going to start gearing up? Like, what's your assessment of the back on that topic?
A lot of state politics. We are in election season. We never leave election season.
It seems that way.
You're in the 2018 election cycle now, so there's going to be Arkansas governor's race. Is already, I hope it doesn't get too much more strange. Asa's probably going to win renomination, but he's got a challenger. I can't remember the woman's name.
I was reading about her.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Are all governors on the same election cycle as our state?
No, they stagger. Every state makes its own decisions. Some states do it the same year as presidential because you have better turnout. Some states do it in the off-year elections, 2017, 2019, because you have fewer races. We do it in 2018 because you have the House races. You'll have the no Senate race this time around, but you have better turnout than off-year. But like,
yeah, I would agree.
We're in early January. You're going to have primary elections this spring, see who runs for each of the parties, and then, running through. Hopefully it won't be too bad as far, like I remember, I think the first really big Senate election, once we got to Arkansas, I think it was 2014, that was Tom Cotton versus Mark Pryor, and it was just negative campaign after negative, ad after ad everywhere. And it's basically Tom Cotton was winning by 20 points when The campaign started, everybody went negative, and he won by 20 points. So.
I hear about Tom Cotton in the news a lot.
Yes.
I mean, he's just from like right across the river in Dardanelle.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then there's that conspiracy about him also, which maybe we should or shouldn't get into. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about what he wants to do, what his future holds, and I'm at the point now I try not to speculate if possible, because I think people drive themselves nuts that way.
I know, man. I was like googling all about him a while back, just because I'd heard some things, and I think he recently he had a pretty rough town hall meeting, probably 6 months, a year ago, something like that. But I read about him, I feel like, in the national news periodically as well.
Yeah, he has national aspirations. And Republican Party leadership aspirations. I read an article on him. My two big sort of online political news sources are Politico.com and another 538.com are my two big sort of go-tos. And I think it was Politico Magazine did a very good write-up of Tom Cotton. Because the one thing they sort of stressed that he was managing to do better than most Republicans is when we say the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you assume nice, big, one big happy family. And for both sides, nothing's further from the truth.
Oh, yeah. That's my total opinion. Is they don't? I mean, it's not that the two parties don't get along. Mm-hmm. It's that nobody gets along, or it's like a Survivor type setup. It's like there are alliances, and, and when committees are formed for certain issues, I feel like then alliances are formed based off. I mean, it's like a Shark Tank.
Oh, it is. But what they were saying is that Tom Cotton had managed two of the biggest blocks of conservatism or Republican, Trump wing, and the sort of the classic Reagan Republicans, and very few Republicans managed to work both sides of that effectively. You have to be kind of the bomb throwing half lunatic version, or you have to be sort of the quiet conservative. But they were saying like Tom Cotton's managed in his own way to find a way to bridge that he is appealing to both sides, which is pretty rare today.
So he's like a centrist within his own party, in a sense.
Yes, he's he's managed to cross those deep divides. So that makes him unique and special in his own way.
I just watched this, and I would recommend it to you if you haven't seen it or if I haven't told you about it. But on JRE, Joe Rogan, Gary Johnson. Like episode 850, something like that. It was but he did. I didn't even know at the time that he'd come on there. I just wasn't charting. I missed it. Mm-hmm. And but that's probably around that time is when I really started watching like every Joe Rogan episode. For the most part, I watch it all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, every now and then there's an episode I don't finish, but there's some episodes I'll even watch 2 or 3 times, like the Paul Stamets episode. There's some really good content on there. But,
yeah.
Anyway, there's a great episode where Gary Johnson just kind of gives his assessment of it's right before the debates on the last election cycle for presidency. So yeah, super interesting.
Have to check that one out.
Yeah, I was super interested. I was like, man, how did I not check this out already? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was good. It was a good listen, good watch.
Oh yeah.
Well, so what do you think? So next election cycle, who you think's going to oppose Trump?
Everybody.
Yeah, I could see that happening for sure. Would be the standard norm.
Yeah. Oh God, if we had a pool where we were sort of messing around late last year, and we had a draft, picking who do you think is going to, be the Democratic nominee in points and stuff like that. So they're lining up, and that's part of, as I was saying, when I teach the parties or whatever, there's differences of opinion in the Democratic Party too. Which way do we go from here? Kind of questions. you will definitely have women candidates. You will have Hispanic candidates. You will have African American candidates. You'll have progressives. The sort of the Bernie Sanders, social American socialist light kind of people, and which one of those groups and how they work together, I think is the easy answer to, some combination of those is the way forward.
Could you see Bernie Sanders running again?
Oh, he'll run again, whether or not he gets any more traction. I think
how old will he be if he runs again?
I want to say he'll be like 73 or 74. So he's long enough in the tooth. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
I feel like that was main reason why John McCain did not get elected. That was the big issue. I remember everyone was talking about his age.
Well, he was, I think, and if I remember right, he give or take a year either way. He was the same age as like Ronald Reagan was running.
Yeah.
But unlike Reagan, John McCain's had a lot more mileage on the tank. The Navy service, the 5 years in the prison camp,
the POW.
Yeah. If you're a cat with 9 lives, John McCain used 7.5.
Yeah.
For those 5
and
years.
And now he has a brain tumor or something.
Yeah. So it's
hard times.
Oh yeah, but that was the one thing that I thought the Democrats were smarter about, is that Barack Obama was a younger president. Late 40s, I think, when he was elected. So all of a sudden, you went back to the old people again. Hillary Clinton, was, I think, in her late 60s, running against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we've got our grandparents running for office again.
Isn't it crazy that allegedly Hillary Clinton's health is in decline? More so than Donald Trump.
Well, she's 70.
Who eats McDonald's every day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Or whatever. But, there were a lot of reports that she had been collapsing, and I want to say they caught her collapsing on camera outside of like a hotel or something.
She had, years before she was Secretary of State, because this came up when she became Secretary of State, she had... they call them like mini strokes. I'm not exactly. Yeah, they're different.
Like almost like little seizures or something.
Yeah,
right? Like little neurological.
Yeah, I mean, this was, now we're getting old. This is probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, yeah.
When she was a senator, that's when it was happening. My aunt went through and she was fine, but it's weird. It's scary. You don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But it's. That's the problem. When you elect people who are in their 60s and 70s, those sorts of health concerns are going to come up more.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get somebody who's in their, late 40s, early 50s, they've got, I forget, you've seen the pictures of how presidents age. They look one way on Inauguration Day, and they look like crap when they walk out.
It is, I'd say, even Obama. I've seen before and afters of him, and but you got to admit, I look a lot different now than I did 10 years ago. I couldn't grow this beard 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, there's 8 years, but it's also, I tell people, you're working, being the president's like a 90 or 100 hour a week job.
Yeah.
You're going to wake up, you're going to get briefings, you're going to have,
Barack Obama had on that Letterman show was talking. He's like, Letterman asked him what he did the day after, and he was like, "Well, slept in."
Yeah,
it's like that was kind of nice. And then he said like somebody called him and was like, "Hey, we got this thing I want to talk to you about." It was like a book deal or something. He's like, super important. We need to get this done. When do you think you could do it? And he's like, "Oh, how about tomorrow?" And he's like, "Dude, it's going to take like 2 weeks to set that up." And he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm used to having to make 30-minute decisions based on people's lives, know?" But that's, imagine the stress that comes with being the president.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane. It's and I'm not going to say that our model does not work or anything, but or suggest that there are better ways or what they would be, but it seems like a crazy, impossible situation for whoever is in that hot seat. And
yes.
It seemed that way, particularly in the post-World War II era. like since the bomb or during the Cold War. I mean, it's just like it's gotten so much more complicated with technology and travel and cyberspace
and lack of control over it. You don't. Welcome to 21st century living. I mean, you saw this, like Jimmy Carter is the one I usually use, where Jimmy Carter's the president. He comes in, it's the post-Vietnam era. Nobody wants to fight foreign wars, but other people had,
What year did Carter
design.
get elected?
76. So he was in office 77 to 81.
So, am I correct in this fact? Is that Jimmy Carter was the first vice president that was never elected because Spiro Agnew. Is that correct?
No, Jimmy Carter was a governor.
Okay, so who replaced Spiro Agnew under Nixon?
Oh, Ford. Gerald Ford.
So Ford.
That was one of the first changes of vice president. At the re-election.
Yes, so that's what I was thinking. Ford, because I mix up Ford and Carter periodically because it's kind of a weird little time.
I joke with my students, like when we do the presidency, I don't even mention Gerald Ford because there's just no,
Well, yeah, he is the first, but if I'm not mistaken, he was the first vice president that was unelected that was then became president when Nixon resigned.
Yeah.
So he wasn't elected as president or vice president.
Nope.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
But Jimmy Carter has problems with OPEC. He has problems with the Soviets. And it's just like everything is so interconnected like that. You saw this, the one I use in the for the Obama administration was there was the big Greek financial crisis. For decades, the Greeks spent, borrowed, and couldn't pay it back. They were saying the Olympics is such, Brazil's gone through the exact same thing. The Olympics are supposed to be so great and bring in all this revenue. They built all this stuff and it never did. But every time the Greeks mentioned, hey, we might default on all this debt we have, like the American stock market drops 500 points. So all of a sudden, the American president is saddled with the decisions of a Greek finance minister. And welcome to interconnectedness 2015. So as a president, and you have a bigger bureaucracy, more issues you deal with. We talk about life was so much simpler politics wise, government wise, say 1950 to today. There was a lot fewer countries, decolonization triples the size of the United Nations in the world.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you got to think about what's going on in 200 different ways. You got the chessboard there, and it's like, okay, you're dealing with 32 pieces. Now you're dealing, imagine trying to deal with a chessboard with 200.
Well, it's like what you're saying about the comp sections, being a department head over professors and a bunch of adjuncts and trying to keep them all on the. I mean, it's nightmarish,
Oh yeah.
Administration and. Division of labor. Leadership is hard.
Oh yeah,
it's one of the hardest things, and I can, like I said, I'm not even going to begin to offer better ways or ideas or anything because I can't think of any.
Yeah,
but it does seem like on a national level, even with a cabinet, even with the vice president, even with a group of advisors, it seems like an impossible undertaking.
Oh, a lot. I use that's the end line of my bureaucracy lecture. You're talking about organizations who might have great aspirations, but you're talking about trying to fix like permanent long-term problems.
Well, when you explained, so I had you in American government.
Yeah.
And when you explained how
I apologize for the scars.
How a bill becomes a law, I was just like,
how does anything get done?
It's like we're screwed here. It's impossible.
Yeah. Well, I think, I talk about, things like, the departments of, things like the EPA, things like the Department of Education. We've been fighting educational battles my entire life. And I'm in my, mid 40s, same thing with environmentalism. And it's better than it's been, but it's still a long way to go. And you're talking about, these bureaucrats have to deal with big intractable problems. How do we educate everybody? How do we feed everybody? How do we get, everybody, healthy in healthcare? This has been basically the American system was built by Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, great society programs. I'm doing a big, and I'm hoping to have Woods on to do an episode on just LBJ. Mm-hmm. But I'm doing a big series of 1968 podcasts: Martin Luther King, RFK, TET.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
The Democratic National
That's
Convention.
Right.
Yeah, I could have you on for the DNC riots.
Oh God,
if you wanted to break that
I could
down.
Yeah, well, Woods covers TET too. I cover. World politics. But I was just thinking, today is Martin Luther King Day, but in Arkansas, it's the first just Martin Luther King Day.
What? Yeah. What's the story on that?
It used to be, up until this year, it was both Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee.
That's
Day.
what I thought. Man, we are such a.
It's part of.
Being a Yankee,
yes,
Mr. Housenick.
Yes, I prefer carpetbagger, please.
What do you think of that? Like looking into the South, because this is another reason I want to start a podcast. Is like one of the main narratives I like is how in Arkansas history is how like the black and some people bring up the narrative that it's like we're perceived as this is backwards, yada yada yada. But the truth is Willie Nelson said we have the best weed in Newton County ever, and all sorts of other cool things. There's great music that comes through here.
Oh yeah,
it's a beautiful state. The nature here is beautiful. The Buffalo River is beautiful.
Yeah.
We have elk. We have all this natural beauty. They're filming True Detective season 3 in Arkansas. They filmed that movie Mud with Matthew McConaughey here in Arkansas. So, I mean,
to me, here's the great thing. I'm an outsider. I'm a Yankee. My great grandparents, I think, if I got the story straight, came to America from Italy. About 1900. So I've got no stake in this, but the way I see the South, because I've actually lived, I was in North Carolina for 4 years. Maryland for 4, but Maryland doesn't really count.
I didn't know you were in North Carolina, did I?
The Army.
Oh yeah, duh. Yeah. Okay, I didn't. I didn't really think about where you're stationed.
There is, I think the struggle of the South is that you do have in all the southern states, you have a lot of what you just talked about. There's great people, good, but I think the trouble you get into is in places you get this weird, very vocal minority, and we're talking like 5 or 10% of the state. But that for some reason they are the ones who get the most attention, capture the narrative, and give the rest of the South a bad name. Like the political example I can use, how many bad stereotypes did Roy Moore bring back up in Alabama? Here he was the former Alabama Supreme Court judge who got thrown off the bench twice.
Who rode his horse to the election.
I
mean, dude, it's like we're not going back to the horse riding days, bro.
No.
Like, what kind of statement are you making with that?
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I'm like, was he trying to appeal to a certain sect of voters that he thought would elect him, farmers and
yes. Well, he's on
racist? I don't know.
He's on his own political wavelength. Like I was saying, the website I really like, it's called 538.com. They don't do a whole lot of stories. They may do 5 or 6 a day, and that's it. But it's all data driven. It's all, here's exactly how we got our evidence, here's how we measured it, and here's what we...
Good for them.
Yeah, and that's part of, I'm an evidence guy.
I want to know the facts and develop my interpretation, and why I like going to, I listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of, I stream a lot of things, but I try and gather my opinion from more educated people's interpretation versus, let's say, a Fox News or whatever news. I don't really watch the news at all. I want to go find my own facts, and then I want to also see how other people are interpreting it, and I almost base my interpretation off of facts that I've accrued and the interpretation of other people's interpretations.
To understand a lot of stuff, especially in politics, you need to read a lot about it, a lot of different angles, perceptions. Like the one I use for, and you still may not get an answer, and I think you have to be comfortable with that. Some people aren't. The example I use is when you're discussing the invasion of Iraq, the first year. There's lots of debate and discussion about how it went off the rails, how the insurgency got started. And there's a number of key actors. They're talking about the president and the vice president, and you start reading all the books from those different angles. But like the one guy who, his name is L. Paul Bremer. He was the civilian administrator put in charge of Iraq for basically a year. There are so many different interpretations of his role. Everything from it was all his fault. He was the master genius running from Iraq by himself without Washington instructions.
So he was like Iraq's Westmoreland.
Pretty close.
In a sense, in a more modern sense, I guess you could say.
Yeah. But that's one interpretation. The other is basically he was Dick Cheney's puppet boy stooge.
Okay, yes, I've heard that.
But here's the thing. Every time you read a different book, a different account, you're getting more of it, but he's an odd character because there's not a clear consensus as to what his role was. Whereas you saw with Westmoreland, you've had time. There's a much more sort of clear narrative on Westmoreland's role in, sort of hyping up our successes, hyping up body counts. People are pretty agreed at this point on his role, where the L. Paul Bremer's still, it's 15 years later, and there's still very, very different interpretations of what he was thinking, what he was doing, those sorts of things. So I think you're on. The more information and more angles you could take in on any topic, the better off you're going to be. You're going to sort through a lot of the garbage and the things like that.
What would you say is going on in the Middle East right now under Trump? Korea is what the hot topic is, but what would you have to say about the Middle East region?
I think the biggest topic is something that no president, doesn't matter who would have won in 2016, has nothing to do with. There is a Saudi Arabian power struggle going on as we speak. That's another, if you talk about age, the king of Saudi Arabia's are all, I want to say he's 80 now, 81. The last one was 88 when he passed away about 2 or 3 years ago, if memory serves. But you've had a lot. It's not...
Here's a quick story. Flavio, who's going to be on the podcast tomorrow, taught Jiu-Jitsu to that guy's grandson. Okay, continue.
Oh, yeah. It's not a European primogeniture perfect succession. There's a number of families all sort of working together and competing to be the next king, designated crown prince. But it's clear that there is a number of high-ranking people who aren't in the sequence have been under house arrest. And Saudi Arabia is sort of the pivot of the Middle East. Their struggles with Iran, their interference and work with Syria, their influence in Iraq, things of that nature. I think this is one of those stories where people are missing it. They're like, okay, the Islamic State's dead, yay.
On the Islamic State and kind of the instability of the region over the last 15 years, we'll say, or more, really. My entire life that I can remember since first Gulf War. But that was the thing with the Mongols, is that they were able to take over the regions they took over in the Middle East during the time they did, like 1300s, because of political and social instability due to Islamic infighting.
Yes. You saw the same thing with the Islamic State in Iraq. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. So you had about 30% of the country running the other 70%. Oppressing the Shia, oppressing the Kurds. Once the U.S. invades, it becomes kind of sort of democratic-ish. But it's democratic numbers. The Shia win, and they control the joint. They control the whole country then. And all of a sudden, now you're, the Shia in the first Nuri al-Maliki, if I remember right, was the first Shia president. He had every intention of paying back the Sunnis for about 30 years of, oppression and their western desert, Bedouin Iraq, and pushing them out. Basically he was giving them nothing. No oil revenues, no governance, and it just pushed them back into the hands of the Islamic State. Kind of the same way they did when the U.S. invaded with it was Al Qaeda in Iraq at the time, but a lot of those people were the same cats, same individuals. Between all those movements, you've lost power, you've been driven out, you're fighting this divide in Iraq between Sunni and Shia, and so it leaves a vacuum so somebody else can step up. And so that's a lot of what happened with the growth of the Islamic State. And then when people went, oh, we have a true existential threat, like, okay, let's put our differences aside. So that's why it's easy to win wars. It's hard to win pieces.
Yeah.
And so.
Indeed. So what's, Israel's always kind of a hotbed of controversy, I would say. And, I would say the number one thing that I'm hearing, other than the things I've always heard, the people, bombs, missiles, Gaza Strip, is they seem to be controversial in the music world. Like there's so many. Like Roger Waters was giving what is Radiohead's lead singer's name?
I can't remember.
Well, he was giving him crap for playing his show there, and it was a big thing in the media, and they were bantering back and forth, and that seems to be a lot of artists are being critical of other artists for playing or not playing shows in Israel. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Not especially. It's the issue is that Israel, I can see why Roger Waters would be perfect. You've got, you write an album in the 70s called The Wall. Yeah. And guess what? Israel's building has been building for years, sort of a massive West Bank dividing wall and creating, separate societies and things of that nature. So it's like, it's logical that Roger Waters would be against that sort of thing, but it's tricky, because you wind up on, you want to allow artistic expression, you want to allow commerce, but Israel is in kind of a bad place. They're kind of stuck in a weird place.
They are.
We've been talking about trying to negotiate some kind of Palestinian state and peace since the last major war in 73 and before that, but we've got
68.
48, 56, 67, 73, a little smaller one in 83, I think, between Israel and Egypt. But it's like it's a
mainstay in the narrative of American history and post-World War II, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to do just an intense study or a series of podcasts just on that. Woods, when Dr. Jeff Woods, we filmed him for some of the projects we did with the K-12 initiative, and he did 1 or 2 talks on Israel. Mm-hmm. And it's a fascinating topic. I'm fascinated by them all throughout the Israelites all throughout history. I actually, with Professor Krieger, did special problems in undergrad where I was trying to link pharaohs mentioned in the Bible but not named with pharaohs we know of from the New Kingdom. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really make any broad-based connections, but I would like to I'm going to continue to take a look at that project over the years because they're finding new things all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Things are being reinterpreted, and I think that 20 years from now we'll know a lot more than we did about Egyptology. Yeah,
but it's tough because you've got this sort of permanent hurting stalemate. Like you can't trying to find a way to separate, to move things forward, to negotiate in good faith. On all sides is difficult. I bring it up a little bit. Israeli politics is, if you want tough, that's a big one because it's a multi-party system. You have like a dozen political parties seated at any one time, and think of the Israeli political spectrum is much wider than ours. Where you may have, like, if you think you have some right-wing individuals in the United States, no. Try Israeli politics. You get, like, hardcore Zionists, and you'll by the way, though, you'll throw in a couple of Palestinian legislators, too, at the same table. So
interesting.
It makes it really, Israeli prime ministers spend almost as much time keeping a governing coalition together as they try and do passing laws and governing. It's because you have so many parties, you get some really strange bedfellows together. I've got a coalition of them that makes a majority. I've got the ultra left wing, the ultra right wing, and a couple in the middle. Well, what about middle left and middle right? Forget them. Couldn't come to a deal.
Yeah, we got our alliance over here.
Yeah. But this would be literally like Bernie Sanders and Tom Cotton forming a political party together and smiling. Yeah, and then keeping them together for a couple of years. Let that sink in a little bit.
Oh, man. That's, yeah, but I bet people are getting paid. And that's probably one of the most important things.
Probably.
All right. Well, so what are you thinking about being a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, Chris Housenick?
It wasn't quite as much of a shock or change as my blue belt. That was the biggest thing I noticed. I told people, like, my jiu-jitsu got a lot better faster the first 6 months I was a blue belt, because it was like ringing the dinner bell. I don't know if everybody's kind of just nice to the white belts or whatever, but all of a sudden you get that blue. White belts want to tap you out.
Yeah,
purple belts want to put you in your place.
There's that funny meme. It's like blue belt, I will never tap to another white belt again. Like, gets promoted to blue belt. Things shit blue belts say, or something like that.
Yeah,
but too funny.
But no, it's good. I'm sort of accepting or getting into sort of what my specialty is. I see myself much more as a escape and survival kind of guy,
like a counter grappler.
Yeah, just everybody, when you talk about these certain players do these certain things, I remember when I first started, like, Dean Lister was sort of like he was the first leg lock boogeyman that was out there.
Yeah.
It's amazing how time changes in 6 years.
Well, they say that Dean Lister even could be the reason that John Danaher got Dean Lister. John Danaher's going to be on JRE today, actually. I thought it was last Monday. It's today. Mm-hmm. But and then Ben Askren's on tomorrow, like NCAA stud wrestler. Mm-hmm. But that Dean Lister, he taught at Henzo's for a period of time, and John Danaher was there during that period of time. And then right after that, you get the Danaher Death Squad, which is just annihilating everyone with heel hooks and foot locks and knee bar. I mean, you name it. So I wonder what he had to do with that.
The thing I took away always from Dean Lister, though, was that he had that incredible run of not getting submitted in tournaments.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, was it 15 years or something ridiculous like that? No,
17, I think.
No, he didn't. He lost matches by points, but he never got submitted until Josh Barnett got him.
Did you hear the backstory on that? I already mentioned this on one of the podcasts, but he Barnett tapped him with that chest compression.
Yeah.
And that is the last thing that Dean Lister tapped to 17 years earlier.
I didn't catch that.
Did his homework.
But it's not, everybody wants to be, I want to be, the flying armbar guy. I want to be, the leg lock extraordinaire, the defensive and survival guy's not quite as cool, not quite as sexy, but it's still, I don't know if it's just my age, where I'm at in my game, but that's sort of what I've, how do you get out of this? How do you defend it?
That's why,
where a lot of my sort of thought is at this point,
You've been fortunate to not sustain, like, any serious injuries since you've been training. Is that true?
No. Everything's
still holding in. Good.
Yep. Yeah, no
that's I'm fascinated, too, by, like, let's just say people over 40. Mm-hmm. And people with serious injuries, like how they adapt and overcome that, because it is Joe Rogan said this on one of his podcasts about having injuries in jiu-jitsu, is that when you do jiu-jitsu, you just learn to compartmentalize it. You know, it's like, yeah, well, you know, my elbow, it's jacked up and I can't use it like I want to, so I'm going to do this. Like the other day, like my shoulder was jacked for whatever reason. I kind of hurt my neck and shoulder, and it was getting better. I went to the chiropractor, and I was just like, all right, we're going to play the guard pass game. I'm going to be on bottom. You guys are probably going to piss just 3 people, but let Justin Myrick and some good some good dudes. Josh, what is Josh's last name? Nordiff, and maybe Bread, and maybe one other person. But I just stuck my hand in my belt, and I was able to knock the first 3 of them out with the sweep. And I got Bread with an arm bar with one hand, but it's like you just learn to compartmentalize and overcome and still be able to roll. And you probably, I'm in a position where I'm in the gym every day, so I have to be multiple times a day. I have to kind of pick and choose my rolls. Like I roll every day. I usually roll multiple times a day every day, but there's certain evenings where I'm not going to roll. And then there's certain, like, you know, it just depends. You know, like sometimes I just roll with my private lessons depending on that. Like, but I get my rolls in every day, but I got to be smart about it. I used to roll every opportunity, and I would almost stay injured. And that, I mean, that was back when I was competing, but, you know, and like during my purple belt, and there was not a time that I probably learned more that I put into new context as a brown belt than I did when I was a purple belt.
Yeah.
So, you know, now it's just, I'm kind of like, I would say just almost relearning everything in a new context, like applying these concepts at Jack and that I brought back from Hickson and that I'm learning from higher level white belts right now. I'm able to see those in a new light. You know, it's fascinating.
That's where I think we're lucky with having our association, because you can have any one of our high ranks from any one of the gyms give the same. You'd say, okay, show me a submission from half guard, and all of them are going to have different details that they follow.
Different flavor.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same general concept, but because their journeys are different, their body types are different. They're going to focus on other details and stuff. A lot of it for me this is a mental game. It's, you know, you got to check the ego at the door. And, you know, for me, I've had to sort of, you know, I'm not old man strong. You know, I mean, we've got, you know, there's Bobby, there's Vince. Bobby's a firefighter. Vince is a general contractor.
He swings that hammer, bro.
They got grips that, like, yeah, you know, they get a hold of you, you're already behind.
On.
Yeah, you're behind. So, but you have to just get over, like, you see this a lot with like younger white belts. It's like when things start to go south and they don't have an answer, they get frustrated, they get down on themselves. It's like, why'd my guard get passed? And at this point, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. You know, okay, you're half my age, you're twice as fast.
Man, my only goal, and I don't even really care anymore, is just to not get submitted. And I'm going to get submitted. I mean, that's the part about trying to train a bunch of savages. It's like Kurt Ossiander says this. It's like you train a bunch of snakes. You can't get mad when one of them bites you.
Yeah.
And that's just like, it's almost a compliment to the coaching. I said this at the end of class the other night. It's like I really just mostly competed to like validate my coaching in a way. It wasn't really because I loved it and enjoyed doing it. It was, you know, something I felt almost like a burden to do at the time. And then, you know, I was able to reassess and reevaluate and be like, well, this is, you know, I'm not really enjoying this right now. And was just able to walk away from competing. And because and that's not saying I won't go back to it. I may, but when I do, I want it to be because I'm looking forward to it, and it's something that excites me. And coaching excites me. Coaching competitors and training people to compete, that excites me. But
see, I think that's where my jiu-jitsu is more naturally now. Micah mentioned an open mat. I was working with Mike, and I forget there's a new guy, shaved head.
Damon.
I think, yeah. I mean, both nice dudes, but I was, you know, I think I rolled with Damon. You know, he got to, you know, he's young, he's athletic. He got to a pretty good event.
Yeah, he's pretty heavy too.
Yeah, he got to a pretty good advantageous spot and couldn't finish anything. And I'm like, come on, dude. Okay.
Well, see, but he had an MMA fight back in the day and trained for maybe 6 months a year or something like that. But it's been a few years, so he's kind of come back in. He's been training a lot, and wants to do MMA. So we'll see where he goes from here.
That would make sense. I laugh because there's a progression I've seen with MMA guys who come our gym and others. When they start, like the first 6 or 9 months or so, they get really good at like 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
And I know how to do an arm bar really, really well. And there's a point though, once they get to about 6 or 9 months, that's when they start to broaden and they got to learn other stuff. But I was able to coach through both Micah and Damon at sort of if you're in somebody's guard, drop your base, spread your knees out, sit back on your heels more, because both of those guys I'm like watching, like, you're going to get flipped around, You get somebody who knows what they're doing is going to wind up sweeping the snot out of both of you.
And,
But I like doing that.
I do too. It's because I didn't learn proper posture in the guard, like the triangle base on your knees, like you're just talking about, until I was a purple belt. In terms of like being able to keep posture, not get broke down, open the guard with true postural pressure and a pelvic tuck and expanding space in their guard. I didn't know how to do that until I was like a purple belt. And that's what I'm saying about, like, I knew this idea of posture in the guard since I was a white belt. But I just, like I said, purple brown belt, moving into my brown belt, I just started recontextualizing everything I'd ever learned, and it's based off of more like these principles that are the threads that bind all my jiu-jitsu together, like connection, the middle, distribution of weight, pressure, compression for pins, I mean, things that just, I mean, you've seen kind of the flavor of what we're doing the last year or so, and how it's changed a little bit, but it's still the same techniques. But I personally have been moving more away from a technique-based game and more into a principle-based game. I was telling Nick Oots the other day, I'm like, look, techniques are cool, but I want you to think in this way. And if you think in this way, you can do anything. A concept of like, hey, here's a concept of guard retention, and this is something that's in between escapes and you holding your guard. Yeah. And let's wrap our head around this concept by looking at these 3 situations, which are techniques, and just starting from a narrative. I've been doing this beginning of most of the classes, and I picked up on it from watching other higher level instructors like Hickson or Eddie Bravo, and they almost like start with a narrative. It's like, for example, we're doing side mount escapes right now, so I'm telling everybody, it's like, and we're doing half guard. It's like, okay, so you escape side mount, and the closest thing is half guard. The next closest thing is full guard. The closest thing from half guard is full guard. So you get the spectrum of possibilities that are closely linked. I mean, you can reverse people and roll them over from under half. You're not awarded points for that. If you can recover your half guard and sweep them, you would be awarded points in a sports situation. But just kind of framing a larger narrative for them to understand, like, hey, if you're escaping side control, that also brings in the guard retention. Like, how did they get to side control? Well, here are the situations. They could have taken you down. They could have passed your guard or half guard. They could have moved from there, from knee mount, full mount, or the backwards in the positional hierarchy to side control. And it's just getting people to think about that sort of stuff is one of my main goals. It's not the main goal. I want them to have these techniques, but to be able to pull them off, like, I think that there's a conceptual understanding that can almost, whether it's the metaphors you use to explain a technique and the analogies, because that's another thing. I'm always trying to give different metaphors or analogies. And I literally see some people, they pick up on metaphor A, and some people pick up on analogy B. And you give them A before you give them B, and A makes no sense, and B turns the corner for them. It's fascinating when you see someone, you see that light bulb go off in their head, you see things click, and it's always like Justin Myrick's like my number one person I'm always using when I talk about that. But probably once a day that he is in a class I teach, he's just like, oh yeah, like smile, like light bulb above the head lights up, and it's like because he gets how that goes into the broader narrative of his own personal game.
Yeah, and that's the trick of it is the comparison I always use is cooking. Like
Which your lasagna is totally those sausages that you make. I was thinking about it at the store the other day. I saw some Italian sausages, and I was like, man,
yeah. We'll have to get, but
cooking.
A lot of like cooking shows are recipes, which is great. You can make some good stuff, but there's not as many good technique shows that show you principles.
I know.
Like the one I always tell everybody, the best if you want to learn how to cook, Alton Brown's Good Eats, because there were episodes where he shows you principles. Like he does one example. He's got a whole episode on making chocolate chip cookies. He takes the same general recipe, changes the ratios, and you get 3 different kinds of chocolate chip cookies. It's the same principles. You got these ingredients. If you use more brown sugar over white sugar, you get this kind of texture, so you can make what you want. But it's that same, he's giving you those things that work for everything in a much more broad kind of based discussion, the same way we talk about, like, I can show you how to do a Kimura, I can show you how to do an arm bar, but if I don't string it together with how did I pass the guard, get to a position, and do it, it's going to be so much less.
You know what is, I kind of, just as a coach or an instructor, methods, like what we're talking about is methods. Mm-hmm. Like you could teach it in the linear fashion. Mm-hmm. You could teach it thematically. We could study all arm bars from all different positions. We could go past the guard to side mount to arm bar, and just the different ways in which you can construct the narrative, A's and B's, combinations, entries, what happens when it doesn't work. That's I tell people this all the time. That's what keeps me coming back. That's what always kept me coming back, is that the puzzle is never complete. Mm-hmm. You're always framing it, always putting pieces in.
Yeah.
And you're so right. It's like always on YouTube, I've struggled with getting like good principles. I've had to really, it's more of a mental game for me of like how much information can I take in and then reassess it and find the linkages and the commonalities and discard that which is useless to me and which, and maybe come back to that useless stuff on down the road. That's happened multiple times too.
Oh yeah.
But it's like I have all this stuff like out in the ether, so to speak, technically speaking, just different guards, different techniques, different ideas, concepts, principles, whatever. And then, they are not connected to my game. Mm-hmm. But in a year and a half, as I recontextualize things and relook at things, like every time I've ever gone over an intense study of a position, I just like totally reassessed it. Like right now with this stuff we're doing with half guard and with side mount escapes, I'm like, oh man, okay, now I understand this, that, and like some of the connection details that Jack Toffert showed me from under side mount. Some of the stuff I picked up from Lucas Lecce on the half guard, watching him play his half guard is very similar to how I've always played my half guard, but I just recontextualize as I'm doing a lot more truck these days, and I'm able to tie that into my back game a whole lot more, even if they do whizzer. I saw Gio Martinez doing and showing this technique where someone whizzers you from half guard and you still put them in the truck on the far side.
Okay.
It's insane. Yeah. I was showing it to Lassiter the other day. Have you ever seen that movie, A Bronx Tale? Come on, bro, you're Italian. You had to have seen A Bronx Tale.
Probably at some point.
It's got Robert De Niro in it and Chaz Palminteri. It's a really good movie. But he's like... there's this mobster, his name's Sonny, and he kind of like raises this kid up to be it's like one of his guys or whatever, and they break up these bikers in a bar, and they're like, hey, yeah, y'all can drink here or whatever, just be good, and then they just start like spraying beer everywhere and stuff, and they like close the door and everything. There's all these other gangsters coming through the back door. He's like, now Zeus can't leave. But I was showing that to Michael, and like I was talking to him about it in morning class. I was like, dude, I got to show this to you here. And we ended up working on it, our private lesson after that. And I was like, I finally got him in it. Because I was trying to get him to do it on his partner, and then I showed it on his partner. I'm like, we'll work on it later. So, but I got him in it, and I was like, now's you can't leave.
Yeah.
Great time to quote a movie when you got somebody in the truck.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's part of being an older grappler, is that you've got to be able to control. Like I'm 45. I'm not winning a cardio battle. With some 21-year-old CrossFit. Like the one I always brought up was like Ben Cook.
Oh, yeah.
He's training for American Ninja Warrior and stuff flexible. Like that. Super flexible. Core. I am not going to win a cardio race with him. I'm going to grab a hold. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to put him in side control and really just grind him until,
See, it's techniques and principles.
Yeah.
And that's all you have when you're super exhausted. And as your body fails you, begins to fail you. That's like we were at like one of the team workouts we do before the AGFs. And I was working out with like Caleb and Tony and Nate and all these different just black belts, higher level brown belts, and we're kind of shark tanking it over there. And I was like, man, we've all been doing this together for, Caleb and Nate and I 10 plus years, and I forget who all else was over there, but and then Tony's been around for 7 or 8 years, something like that. But
oh yeah, I was I think it was the summer AGF workout. I was with I was in there. I was with the group, but I was definitely the old man of the category. Like the guy you brought in for the movement,
Derek Huddleston.
Yeah, he was in my group, and he's fresh out of whatever Middle Eastern country he'd been deployed
Afghanistan, climbing mountains, being in a band, playing rugby.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude is a total bro.
Yep, and it was like, nope, not gonna out cardio this guy, but. Like, you've been there 2 or 3 hours, you're like, technique. And the other two, I think it was Steve Gorley, and, who's the other judo black?
Jeremy Bushong?
Yeah, I'm in that group. So needless to say, my side control escapes went nowhere.
Oh, dude, I've been in that same group with like Eric Ingram and Alan Shedd, like a whole group of killers.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I looked around as, it's like, man, imagine me having the knowledge and technical ability I have now at even 25. I'm about to be 31. Oh, yeah. And it's just like, as you age and get better at technique and assimilating concepts into your game, your body, in a sense, is going the other direction.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in a sense, it's like you can't prevent aging. And they say that the scientists, I don't know, the people that write the articles on my phone say that you increase your, and I've heard doctors say this, you increase your core strength, you should, until the age of 50. And then it's like, then it starts going downhill. You start losing muscle mass and stuff until you are no longer here. But that's, with jiu-jitsu, it's like as your technique increases throughout your entire life that you train and you get better and you understand more, your body goes the other direction.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
no, there's a couple of things on that is, one, you put in the mental reps. Like, I think...
That becomes a big part of it.
There's so much, I've been at it now about 6 years, a little over 6 years. And I think that's one thing I've seen is how much...
When did you start, 09?
Yeah.
Man, that's 8 years, bro.
No,
You started in 09. Because
I've been at it 6 years. 6 and a half.
Okay, so 09, and we're in 2018.
Nah, it's not been that long.
It's got to be, because I opened. Maybe you didn't start.
I started right as you opened Force at one point, like a couple of months
a little
before
that. Yeah, because you were doing privates with me on that back mat.
I used those privates.
I opened it. So you maybe 2011.
Yeah, that'd be right.
Okay, yeah.
So, because I remember my wife works in downtown Russellville. There's we talk about real estate development and stuff like that, and there's some strange property owners and landlords in downtown Russellville.
Indeed.
Because the one I remember was when you started out doing private lessons at that other place. You'd be in this back room, you're rolling around, and you wind up like in side control, and your head's turned to look at the back doors, and you're like, oh, nice alley out back.
Yeah, downtown Russellville is. I like how they're redoing it though and making it. More of a part of the community.
But you find stuff like that. But now lost my train of thought.
Yeah, frequently that back door at that location would flood too. When it would rain, it would.
There was
water in.
But big one for me is I'll be really interested to watch like our kids' classes as they grow, develop. Because I was talking. I got it now. How YouTube has changed in videos like that. The quality's gotten better. Because I remember starting out. You go to look up, bridge and roll on YouTube, and it's like two guys on cardboard in their basement.
Yeah, and now Hicks
6
and
years
Gracie
ago
was like, hey, let me go ahead and set the record straight on how to do the bridge and roll, put it on Budo videos.
Yeah, but there's all, you can find, especially once you get to, maybe a year in, you start knowing, okay, who is known for this position? If you want half guard, you're going to find, Tom DeBlass's stuff. From both bottom and top, or X chokes, cross chokes. You're going to Lovato Jr. and stuff like that. That's where I think a big difference is. I'm interested. I've got 2 daughters, and what they're if they stick with it, what kind of knowledge base is going to be available for them.
Oh, I know. I know. I'm fascinated to see because every year that we're in, that Cora and I and the whole team is doing Forza, it gets better.
Oh yeah,
every year, and every generation of white belts, and every generation of kids, students that move from white to yellow belt, and et cetera, it just keeps getting better. And I'm excited to see what the future holds, and because I was thinking about this earlier, and I joke with it about people because I'm to the point now where people constantly ask me like, bro, did you know it was going to be like this? And I'm like, well, yes, I did. This is all intentional. But, and they're like, but yeah, because 23, when I was 23, so about 8 years ago, I didn't, you knew me then.
Yeah.
I was, you were
still the department helper.
You were untucking your shirt at 2 p.m., getting ready to go home, and I was there in the office being sure nobody needed coffee. So,
and your famous weight cut.
Oh man, that was so rough, dude. 2010 weight cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and I still came and trained with you.
Yeah.
I want to die.
This guy seems to have his stuff together. Yeah, I remember being 163 in the department that morning and cutting to 157 and throwing up green bile, and I'm gonna die sooner because of that. But whatever. But too, that's one thing that I want to do a Sports Unraveled on weight cutting, and we're gonna do several on performance enhancing drugs.
Well, the story I know you want to catch, I think Paige Van Zandt said this was a bad weight cut.
Yeah. Well, and then Uriah Hall was like apparently on death's door. His head coach just died from Extreme Couture. And he was sick. I maybe had the flu 3 weeks ago rather. And this is just last night for UFC St. Louis. And they
I know he got pulled. I caught the headline.
Got pulled, and now Vitor Belfort's fighting Michael Bisping. We've gone full circle with this, man. We started off talking about widespread panic and music. That's why I went with the title Life Unraveled, because we've talked about politics, we've talked about music, we've talked about the Middle East. Old man jiu-jitsu in general. Now we're back on MMA, but in movies. But I have a little spot on the podcast for every one of these topics. So it's with the Music Unraveled and after the show. So maybe if I watch all of Black Orphan, you can come on and do
Orphan Black.
Yes. Sorry. You can do a and is that a Netflix original? Yeah.
No, I think it's BBC or BBC America.
Interesting.
It's on Netflix.
Black Mirror is a.
I've got that in my queue.
Dude, it's so good. Now I will tell. I've told everybody this because like I started watching the first episode. Well, Cora did, and I was taking a nap, and I woke up, and there was this super horrid part in the first episode that kind of like the whole episode is based around. But maybe start with the second episode and watch the whole series. Then come back and watch the first episode, and then there's another episode called Nosedive that sucks. But there's like 19 episodes, and it's so futuristic and such a trip, man. It is just, it's a trippy show, so check it out.
Yeah. I'm kind of into those anthology series. I know one just launched, I think, Amazon Prime. I think it's Dreams of Electric Sheep, I think is the title, if I got it right. One of the guys, Philip K. Dick is his name. He's a very prolific science fiction writer.
What else has he done?
He wrote Men in the High Castle.
That's what I was thinking.
He wrote the original book for that, but he also wrote...
Are you excited about season 3?
Of course.
When's it coming out?
Sometime this year. We were saying sort of you get these announcements that get you all excited, but then they don't tell you when they're going to launch it.
Man, there's so many things. Like there's Game of Thrones. There's the next Better Call. Have you been watching Better Call Saul? It's
Yes.
3 seasons, man. Yeah. Okay, we talked about
This was the first season. Season 3 was the one where I thought Saul finally sort of took over his own show.
Yeah.
The first season, I thought Aaron Trout was awesome. I mean,
yes, I love
Saul had a good plot line, but it wasn't as sort of gripping and
I know they didn't
keep you there.
Well, I guess it embodies his character of Slippin' Jimmy.
Yeah,
that's what you really get established, is that like what he used to be, what he's trying to become, and what he's gonna be. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of like, and I think that we're moving into the part. I wonder how many seasons they're gonna do. And the director created the show, who Gilligan.
Yeah,
he confirmed that Chuck is dead.
Yeah.
Burned himself up in his own house.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I should have said that before I said that.
Yeah. But I'd be interested. I know for Breaking Bad, they said they had it planned 5 seasons, and they had it laid out.
Well, apparently they're going to bring this all the way up to the Walter White. Like Walter White will be in Better Call Saul.
I could see like the last shot of the last season when he, walks into Saul's office.
Either that, or maybe imagine them telling portions of the Breaking Bad story from Saul's perspective.
That'd be good too.
Yeah, to where it's like you don't see Jesse and Walt really, but in passing.
Yeah.
But they're telling what Saul's doing during that era.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they've got to bring it up to that because they keep doing flashbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
brought back Tuco and stuff like that.
Tuco Salamanca, yeah.
When he's not quite as...
Well, and he's going to be in there again next season. He's got to be.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to actually have...
they only gave him a heart attack. They didn't give him a stroke yet,
I'm going to give Evelyn's fiance, Bob, freaking Bob, he's going to come on and review Better Call Saul with me. He's a huge Better Call Saul fan, so on after the show.
No, actually, one of the things I'm reading, my wife got it for me for Christmas. It's a book. It's called From a Certain Point of View. It's a Star Wars book. It's celebrating the 40th anniversary of the original Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
But what they've done is they're all short stories. There's like 40. And they're telling little vignettes within the original Star Wars movie. Like they actually have, I'm reading now, it's the Mos Eisley Cantina scenes.
Oh, interesting.
They did one short story from Greedo's perspective. They did one short story from one of the musicians' perspectives, what he sees looking out. Another short story.
Interesting.
The next one's the bartender's version. But it's telling the exact same, scene, 3 different directions from 3 different...
Every time I watch that movie, I get that Cantina song stuck in my head. the da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, funny.
40 years. That's all I got to say.
Dude, it's like, this is it. Like every podcast, like we're in the zeitgeist. Every... Star Wars comes up, what's going on in MMA comes up, Jiu-Jitsu comes up, like every politics, whatever it is, it all comes up.
I teased you with it. You finally got to go see Star Wars. Did you get I told you got to go see it. There's a whole Jiu-Jitsu discussion right in the middle of Star Wars. Did you catch that?
No.
It's the whole Luke. Spoiler alert, the Luke Yoda conversation.
Yes, I did.
We learn more from our failures than that. It's like that's everything we ever do on the myth.
Page turners, they were not.
No.
Yeah, those YouTube videos weren't page turners.
No.
But that's it. That's it. Like I wrote an article and I'm rehosting our blog on the podcast website. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start doing sort of broader topics. But I wrote a blog on like just being a student of martial arts and jiu-jitsu. And I mean, taking notes is one thing. Video breakdowns is part of it. And there's different videos you can break down. Technique videos, competitions. You can
that's one
drilling videos like Jason Scully style.
That's one I think is underrated, is watching yourself, being able to actually, because I think I'm a bit rare. I can remember what happens during a roll pretty well, but when I talk to a lot of people, they're like, I don't know. I just kind of rolled around. And
I got to get cameras in the gym, like Omar French has, like 3D sort of fisheye cameras that hang down. Because if I could get one over each mat, it's great for counting class size. Because I mean, we have well over 100 people coming in and out of there on the mats every day. But it would be nice to just be able to look at morning, noon, and evening class and be able to see how many people are there. But also, you can pull and put footage on the drive. I have unlimited drive storage.
Yeah.
So just dump it all in there, literally.
But I remembered I was, this was back at Forza 2.0. I was coming in, it was me, John, and Sharpie for one lunch class. And we actually recorded me rolling with John once. And when I could look at myself and see, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm moving.
And it's a way of assessment.
Yeah.
Not the way, I mean, but it is a way.
But there's something when you can see yourself, pause, stop, back up.
That's why I almost feel guilty, and why I almost always show the technique on a second person, unless I know who I showed it on knows it, like if it's George or whoever. It's like seeing things in 3D. Like the other day, I was showing Nick a technique in a private lesson, and I was like, hey, let's film me doing it to you real quick on my phone. I'm just going to prop it up here. And then you watch me doing it to you. Because, like, it was hard for me. He was, like, it was an underside mount, like an Americana sort of sit-up reversal. And there's the one where you roll them over. There's one where you could sit up with them. And then they're like in Kessa and an Americana, typically. And you just turn down to side mount. Finish the lock. So he was having a hard time picking it up, because you pick up the Americana in this funny little way. And if you come in, we're working on it right now. If there's doing like a knee slide, like slider pass type guard pass, and you catch that Americana, you just walk your hips out and set up, and they end up like sitting down on their butt in a sense, and you just come up on top of them. So see those Allen belts? Well,
I got you.
Where were they? Oh yeah. Alan Belcher just sent me these DVDs, which he never sent me when I ordered them back in the day. But I had to log into his website, which he said would last for 99 years, but it only lasts for like 3. So, but there's a on that website, he has this. I think he calls it a side control Kimura, but it's definitely an Americana, unless he has that somewhere else. But there's a cool little series of techniques on there. And it might be on here. Immune to leg locks, immune to submissions. Yeah, it's cool stuff. I bet his immune to submissions Americanas is not immune to the Jack Toffer, Hickson Gracie style of Americana. Would almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to watch these. I just got them in the mail the other day, but that's why they're in here, so I can break them down. Well, man, we gotta wrap this up. We got some noon jiu-jitsu here in about 53 minutes, and I'm gonna get a little snack and drink some water before that. So you gonna be making it to noon class?
That's the plan. Yeah,
Sweet.
I got the gi packed in the car.
Well, happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody. We'll catch you next time on Life Unraveled. We're having Flavio Kennep on tomorrow with Caleb Plank. We've got.
I can make the seminar tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, fantastic! Good, man.
Shout out, thank you, Danielle Housenick, for being able to juggle schedules.
Hey, well, we just did right here on the podcast. Thanks, Danielle. And when you show me how to set up my blackboard, well, thank you again. But also, we're having Flavio and Caleb are on tomorrow. Then the seminar. Then we're having our first edition of Music Unraveled, Todd Snyder concert review. Todd Snyder Unraveled with Michael Booty. Then on other Music Unraveled, you can look forward to us doing a 2017 concert review. Booty and my buddy Colby, between the three of us, we probably went to 100 concerts in 2017.
Damn.
We all three saw Roger Waters at 3 different venues. And
that I remember.
Booty and I went to Tulsa. Colby and I went to Nashville and with Cora and Allie. And then Colby went to Kansas City. So, and they were all 3 slightly different shows. I mean, same set list essentially, but he played a slightly different version in Nashville. And you know what? They were playing David Gilmour's solo stuff when we were outside at Nashville. Funny.
Oh, yeah.
But so look forward to that. Also be having Jack Toffer on the podcast. Michael Sandow's booked. We had to do a little rescheduling with him. But we've got Robert Regner as well, our resident massage therapist and all-around great dude and interesting cat. So, but those are some of our guests we have coming up. Stay tuned. We're going to be putting out podcasts on a regular basis. This will be our first video episode that we filmed video that we think has really good video and lighting and audio, but we'll see. So maybe you're watching this in the video version. If not, we'll get it down soon. We're going to be expanding our background here in the studio and always tweaking things and making them better for our listeners. So we'll see you guys next time on Life Unraveled.